design and ways also. How can you find a good provider? And if you are a provider, how should you organize marketing and sales? How can you be small, innovative, all over the world, survive? And how do you do that? So this is a question that is permanently, So we have taken, I would say, a collection of people who are really experienced in this area. There are people who are IP provider, people who have already grouped several providers below on their umbrella. And I must say that we have also program at design and reuse, because on our website, you click on an IP and we send you to the guy. But these people who are integrators, the people who collect different IP pieces and try to collect an offer, and who go to the customer and say, oh, I represent this PLL vendor, I represent this core vendor, I have a portfolio of IP. It's called an added value reseller or a VAR, an integrator. What should the ANR do on the website? Because it's the IP of the provider, so we had also a problem. How should we tell to the community? Because we have a big traffic, these are IP providers. These are system integrator and VAR, and they cover several IPs. So they have adopted a certain number of IP providers. And when they go to a client, they say, we have a portfolio. I have provider 1, provider 2, provider 3. And the consumer may say, oh, I have more chance to succeed if I can discuss 2 or 3 IP with the same contact. So this is also an issue for us. Mark, you should be on the panel, no? China is invited too. You don't know. But okay, no chair. Okay, chair will come. So this is all the question. It's a question for the consumer, for the IP provider, and even for DNR, because we don't know exactly how we should publicize on the web. So as part of this panel, I try to understand where in the... Okay. It's not very clean this year, sorry for that. I have the PO of Nigel Dixon, CEO for COT2M. Can you show up your hand? Okay. He has over 20 years of experience in the semiconductor and consumer industry with deep knowledge of the mobile wireless IoT wearables. He has held VP level of management and technical position in the semiconductor and system industry, such as Texas Instruments, Lucent Microelectronics, and Motorola. He had made several startups. It's so long, I cannot say everything about you. So, but what I can say, T2M represents here what we call the VAR added value reseller or integrators. So they are supposed to go to a customer and present a portfolio of IP and be able to follow the design and so on. So they typically represented the process that we would like to discuss this evening. Then we have Amir Bar-Niv from Cadence. I think has already been introduced. He's a senior group director at Cadence Design System, where he managed the design IP marketing team. Amir responsible for, I think you have been introduced already with your paper. So it's also important to know if when you want several IP, should you all go to Cadence and Synopsys and buy all of them? So he represents a kind of alternative. Then you are sure to have the same guy in front of you because you can buy this IP and this IP and this IP. So it's a little bit the counter proposal of the other people who want to integrate the different IP that you need. Then you have Sébastien Rabou from Barco Silex. He's product manager at Barco Silex, following the SOC project or ASIC and FPGA and cryptographic IP development. He's working there for about 10 years. Barco Silex is a very well-known company in Europe, very successful as a design center. And I think they have also some thought of how they should bring some IP to the market. They're typically a kind of IP provider which are the design center, which have some excellent pieces that they sell as IP. So it's a very typical IP provider. And I think they have also some thought about how they should go to the market with their product. Mark Ma, you have it, you saw it in the morning. He acts in China, I could say politely, more as a rep. You know, he represents some provider in China. It's a very important piece of bringing IP to the market, it's very difficult to go to the China and raise your hand. So he represents a kind of path into a country or even a continent. And behind, you can have still a different support level for your IP. So I would classify different category. Sanjeev Sharma is here. Okay. He's at Terminus Circuits. He's currently serving as Director IP Sales and Marketing for Terminus, a Bangalore-based IP company specialized in high-speed interface product. He's responsible for driving the marketing and sales operation for Terminus Circuits and has winning customer for SerDes. He was also instrumental in establishing relationships with various foundries, VCA partners, sales channel, as prospective customer before he was a WIPO. So Sanjeev, I think, is in this panel for a very precise reason. India is precisely a continent, a country where there are many IP providers, and I think they have a problem to represent themselves outside. Exactly. It was a question. Should we federate all the IP providers in India so that when we go to a customer, I can speak in the name of Terminus, in the name of Cosmic, they've been acquired. So they are very open to this topic. How should IP provider go to the market? And is here also to find a solution to what they think is a problem in India. So I have now Howard Pakosh. So he's a guy who is part of the system who say, no, not IP provider, several IP providers, and I am an integrator, and I'm capable to support portfolio in various domains. And when I go to a customer, I can help in integrating. So it's an IP distribution based on more integration. So Howard Pakosh has been involved in all facets of sales and marketing for the last 25 years. He previously served as Director of Sales for Sonics Incorporated, the leading provider of intelligent interconnect solution to make system on chip. The device smart interconnect solution managed complex IP on-chip communication. Previously, Mr. Pakosh worked at Virage Logic, where he worked as Director of Emerging Markets for the leader of semiconductor intellectual property. So I think I don't know if I've forgotten somebody, maybe no. So, it's okay? Oh, Hal, oh my God. So where are you? I have no paper for you. No, Cast, I've interviewed Cast, I can say some word. They've created Cast in '83. Before the IP world was invented, selling models and so on and so on and so on. So they are the inventor, one of the inventors of the IP concept. And in fact, they are also a very good example. They had their business, they had their IP. I remember the 8051 that they downloaded on the NR website. And what they did as a design center, they agglomerate IP providers. So when you see CAST, it's in fact exactly what I say, a portfolio of IP providers that they represent and sell together and put a solution in the hand of the customer. So I think, no, I couldn't forget you, sorry. He's the founder, CEO and chairman, president of CAST. Now we have tried to see the question one. So when you want, what is the manpower do you need if you want to succeed in IP business tomorrow? I want to succeed something. I want to put an IP in the market. So what should you invest? IP business is so mysterious. Some people grow and go like that. Some collapse. Some other are acquired. How can you manage what is the importance when you do an IP? It's more engineering. Should you have exactly immediately a marketing manager? What is important, having a worldwide sale or support of integration? Or you can say, no, selling IP, I know what it means. I have to go to the customer. I have to work on the integration. That's the business of IP. And is this true for all classes of IP? So what is the relative power? What should I do if I have an IP? I have an idea in my hand. I know how to do, of course. What is the price to pay to bring up the market? So, of course, the engineer is the first source idea, but there could be not all the clever design which have a clever idea will go to market with an IP and survive. So we will ask this question to different providers. So Barco, Silex, can you comment?
So if we look at the different aspects when you make an IP, there is of course the engineering part, the sales and marketing, and the integration, the support that you have to provide when you sell the IP. If you look at the engineering part, it's very dependent in terms of effort of the complexity of the IP. And it depends also on the kind of experience you have in developing those type of IP on those type of feature that you want to implement. But one key aspect in it is the verification. I think this morning there was a presentation talking about very complex verification of analog IP, for instance. You have other IP that are quite complex to develop, like video processing. We have IP in video processing, and you have the notion of quality concept in it. So it can take quite some time to validate that. And other stuff like protocols or interoperability can take also a lot of time to validate. On the other hand, you have other IPs that are much more easier to verify. If I take some, not all, but some cryptography API, quite easy to validate it. It's quite binary. So the effort can vary a lot. It can be from 1 to 10 or even more, depending on the kind of IP you wanna make. On the other side, in sales and marketing, from what we see, it's rather absolute, regardless of the complexity of the IP. So we have a couple of people working in this field, and let's say the amount of effort is more or less the same, whatever kind of IP it is, if it is complex or not. Of course, in terms of marketing, you have sometimes different approach, whether it's more vertical or horizontal, depending on the kind of IP you have. But basically, it's about constant, right? Another aspect is the integration or delivery to customers. What can happen is that when you deliver an IP to a customers, there might be some small changes, small adaptation to do, or depending on the technology that you are using, if you do an FPGA or you have to interface with hard macros, depending on the devices or type of FPGA, you have some work also to do around that. And it also depends a lot on the nature of the IP. And again, we have our video IPs, we see that this integration part is not, it's far to be neglectable. Because you have a lot of bit rates, the resolution, devices which are different, so it can take a lot of time. Another kind of IP, it can be, let's say that the delivery and the support can be just a couple of days. So it varies a lot depending of the nature of the IP. So
Cadence, can you comment? So it's not obligatory to have a slide. Can you comment about what you think, what's necessary to give out an IP to the market, what's forces?
Okay, so I think if we're talking on design time, obviously it's depends on the complexity of the IP, how long it takes. You know, soft IP controllers, you know, can take, I would say, 5 man years. Complicated SerDes IPs can easily take 30 man years to develop in the high speed. But when we look on the rest of the list in this question, specifically, you know, how much marketing effort is needed, or support, or sales, then I believe Cadence is probably a different animal, because for us it's the economy of scale. We have many IPs. It's very hard for me to point out how much effort is needed for a single IP to push it to the market. We have a huge portfolio of IPs, and then we have a dedicated marketing, support, and sales forces that drive all of them in the market. Of course, the challenge is to identify the needs of each specific vertical market and make sure that we create the full portfolio for that market in order to maximize the return with regard to the sales, marketing, and support teams.
Thank you. I think, yeah, Cadence, you are a special animal, as you say, because it's integrated in your overall business. Yes. It's, okay. Ah, sorry, you had slides. I apologize. I've seen something right. I'm absolutely sorry. I should have reacted. I said Cadence didn't answer. Okay. Cast. You already answered to the type of vendor. This was just, the first question was about the energy you have to sell to bring an IP to the market.
Yeah, I thought this was a nearly impossible question to answer straight out about the makeup, because the simple truth is that there is no single answer. There's just too darn many variables to give a simple answer. Is the IP digital IP? Is it analog? Is it mixed signal? Is it hard IP? Is it soft IP? What kind of volumes of the IP are anticipated to be sold? I mean, those are a huge number of variables, and there's no way that anyone can give an answer. Although at the end of the slide I will give you one. But I'm defining the thing in a much narrower set. But I thought I'd pop up a level and just talk about, because the panel was discussing about a VAR model. So I thought I'd ask the question, what is a VAR? And obviously it's a value-added reseller.
But this is the next question, because
it's not quite the same.
At the bottom.
It's not quite the same. I'll pop down, Gabrielle. It's to me, this value-added reseller is it's got to be asked some value. My definition is an IP provider that adds value by combining its own IP that it develops with IP from other providers under a single business umbrella, such that the customer, the end customer, need only deal with a single entity, the VAR. The added value can be a single licensing. It can be ability to negotiate terms no matter the source of the IP. It can be a single point of contact in both pre-sales and post-sales for the customer. A set of standards that go beyond those standards of the actual IP developer itself to make sure that they're consistent across the line, consistent documentation across all products, and technical manpower to integrate those IP blocks and meet unique customer needs. So going back down to the original question, a wild-ass guess of relative manpower for digital IP. This is a soft or firm core that is standards-based. Again, that's quite different too, standards-based versus proprietary. Engineering, roughly 40%. Marketing has got to be at least 20%. Sales around 20%. And then the integration, who knows? It's somewhere in that range, though. And those numbers are going to vary depending on what kind of IP we're talking about.
Yeah, okay. This first question is just to make people aware that engineering is 40% and marketing sales also 40%. I don't think it's not more if it's worldwide. So Chipstart, what's your opinion about the energy you have to deploy at which level to bring an IP to the market?
So the relative manpower that's deployed from one innovative IP solution to a commercial success in the global marketplace is dependent on, as has already been mentioned, on the type of IP, whether it's digital, analog, and so on, right? And so generally digital IP is easier to implement, analog is not, and therefore it'll be more costly. So how do you define a commercial success? We meet and we get requests from at least 1 to 2 different small IP developers a week, asking them for help in getting to market. And some of them don't have very aggressive goals. They just want to have a lifestyle business. So they just want to focus on engineering. You go look after our business for us. Then you have the other end of IP developer out there who want to be very aggressive and want to become the next ARM. And so you have a different business model with them. So we have 20 different IP partners that we work with, and they range from one end of the scale to the other. But in general, in starting an IP business, you have certain minimums that you have to get to, and this is what's evident in this chart that we've put up, in that hypothetically, if money was no object, this is what you'd expect, that engineering front, you need at least 2 committed developers, some specialists that can help optimize that IP, whether it be size, speed, power, standards, etc. Test and verification, test engineer, as our friend Stefan here brought out, is necessary to help qualify that IP. And from a sales, from a marketing standpoint, rather, you can get away with someone who has experience in the market and can promote some outside legwork help. And yes, a salesperson or a sales rep with expertise in building a structure and partnerships, and then some type of app person to handle the customer integration. So in reality, if you're building this small from scratch in the valley, you're going to have an entry tag of about $1.5 million just in salary costs. Then you have to add your tooling and all that on top of it. So at a minimum, you're looking at a minimum of $2.5 million of revenue to get off the ground. So you have to have that market space, that value, that target of the product you're building to get into the IP business. If you build that team in Texas or in Europe, you're down to around 900K. You go into India, you're at much below 400 or 500K. You go to China, you're well below that. But we'll talk to Sanjeev here, and he'll give you some of the challenges being based in India. You have low development costs, but then, man, how do you get to market? You're in a tough position there. So that's our view of answering this first question on IP.
Yeah, what this first question was about, that we open focus on engineering. I have a good idea, it's reliable, I've tested it, and then we see this little IP provider, who is probably excellent, and DNR tries to advertise, because how can you say I take a vendor in this continent and so on? Okay, do you want to add something, Mark? You are not obliged. Mark, what do you think what is required to bring an IP to the market? 20% of engineering, 80% of engineering, 20% of marketing. What is your estimate?
Actually, I agree to Mr. Hao's input. There's no single answer. But my input is from my experiences. So if we step back a little bit, actually it will be not only depend on the IP type, but also depend on the market situation, right? If the IP you are making is only one, you are the single one providing, then there's a little effort need to be provided for marketing. But usually if there's a more competitive market, then you will need to put a bit more for the advertising. It also depends on the business stages. If the IP company is newly set up, there's no track record, customer may challenge you always like, oh, you have a track record, do you have a successful story, and so on. So at this stage, the major issue is really for customer to know you. Then for me, there will be 30% for marketing, 40% for the technology, and then 30% for the support. Yeah. And then if for the repeating customer, the support will be becoming more important.
Yeah. I think after years, the world is so small now. You have to sell in Asia and everywhere. TDM, what do you think? What is the relative investment you have to do to bring something to market? An IP provider.
Thank you. Hello, is this on? Yeah, it is on. We approach the question from our perspective because we focus very much on very complex technologies in the marketplace, complex connectivities in the Bluetooth, the Zigbee, the Wi-Fi, and other sort of areas. Standards-based, but they have multiple components to them. Complex RF, complex digital software, system solutions. And as you see from here, it also depends on where in the market. We have one client, for example, who's doing WiGig. Now, WiGig it doesn't exist today. There is one company acquired by Qualcomm who is driving it, but the market for it is very early. We have other business like Wi-Fi, which is extremely popular and is moving forward from N to AC and beyond. So it depends on where they are in the market segment. It depends on their ecosystem. We discussed earlier ecosystems in the previous presentation. What else is required to put them together to be a system solution? An RF doesn't work by itself. It needs a baseband. Software needs to run on it. So you need to look at the whole solution, not just the individual. Again, we're coming from our perspective of system solutions as opposed to individual interface IPs like a USB, which is more generic and has more opportunity. And then you look at the market itself. I mean, how big is the market? Is it a general market where you can sell USB into every socket out there, or is it very focused? So the question has many answers to it. And Gabrielle's point just now, you have to attack the world. You can't just be limited to one location. So one thing we bring is a global perspective to it. So we take the product, we take our clients to a global market. And that is important. So many of our clients, they start off with an engineering idea, they develop a concept, they're very engineering orientated, and we bring a value proposition to create partnerships, to create ecosystems, and to bring them to the market. And that can be a difference of 80% engineering to 20% front end, sales, marketing, business development to 50-50 to even more. People always underestimate how hard it is to take a product to the market.
Thank you. What is true in IP, the first thing you say depends on the IP. We have the problem since the beginning. What is in common with a PLL and a GPU? Whatever you do in IP, we have to begin which type of IP. That's true. Terminus, to finish the first question.
Yeah, I mean, as the panel also mentioned correctly, it all depends on the, what kind of motivations that you have to develop the IP. And if it is a new company, I have seen in especially many places, the startups, if you see, like the founder's profile will be more technical in nature, and there will be always a synergy from maybe most of the founders are coming from one team and they have a huge learning curve. So that really helps them to cut down some of the additional resource which is required to develop the IP. So they exploit their learning curve, they exploit the experience curve. But also I have seen in the same due course, there's a ambiguity in the role. The same founder who is very technical in nature, they believe that they can be a good marketer also, and they believe that why they require the salespeople. Okay, and most of the time due to the resource crunch and all, they feel the analog designer can work as an analog designer and he can be an application engineer too. So this is a very practical problem also every startup has to deal with. But given a simple compositions to start with relatively a complex IP where the founders or the technical team has a good experience curve, I believe 10 to 15 people or 12 to 15 people or 12 to 20 people. Okay, it depends on what kind of standards, what kind of complexity you want to address it. Engineering for resources is required, and I'm the person who is a strong believer in the having a right representations of company into the global market or wherever they want to operate it. So the marketing and sales support is very much required in order to get into the exact market demand, why it is required. It's very important to answer this question, why it is required and why we are doing that. Okay, so what I have seen, most of the company, they have a huge concern. What if you are a small guy and you are no longer there to support us? So this is the question one has to really work on before they even think of the developing of the new IP. So dedicated application support is very much required, and it is very paramount to think of at least this in the the resource planning phase.
Okay, but you think give a big advantage for engineering. I need 15 engineers and I have 2 sales guys and 2 support. You still see the influence of the engineering. It's the big part of your expenses would be engineering.
No, that's right. Because why?
But okay, I believe you. But it's still we are still in engineering minded. We stay all the people here have been engineers, I think. So we are still in the mind engineering first and engineering, and you see the proportion.
I mean, I think one comment to make is that technology doesn't sell itself. Right. I mean, that's the bottom line. Doesn't matter how great the technology is, it needs to be sold, it needs to be marketed, and there needs to be a customer to purchase it. And that's the way the market works.
Okay, so how should go IP to the market? You know, when you sell the DDA tool, I have sold DDA tool in my life, you have distributors. You have a guy which distributes you, and would be similar to EDA tool. So you can have rep, I have a rep. The question was, is IP sales similar to EDA sales? I'm not quite sure. When we were an EDA company, you had rep in each, some rep in some country, and you had distributor which are reselling your IP. I'm not sure that the way to sell IP can be similar to the IP. So rep and distributor, is it a scheme for IP provider, yes or no?
So indeed, the marketing and sales aspect is very important. So using rep or distributor is definitely useful to address new market, new geographical market, people who knows the local market. So this helped really a lot in this sense. Even if you have websites and you have the digital world so everybody can see quickly who you are and what we are doing, it's still useful to have representative on local representative. But then the difference between distributor and rep, the advantage of the distributor is rather limited. Basically, it's not like also a distributor of Xilinx of Altera. There is no stock to manage and so on. Basically, the support, the technical knowledge is owned by us. So we have all the technical knowledge. We can do the pre-sales, the delivery, and so on and so on. And they can only do a first line of technical discussions. So afterwards, we have to take that in hands. So basically, the main advantage of having a distributor, and we have distributor, is when you have really a serious cultural or language barrier. We have in Japan, for instance, where you really need a close collaboration with the customers. So then there it's useful. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So what you say, and we know it, the ownership of the knowledge usually stays at the IP provider. That's very special. It's very difficult to transfer all your design skill. So the knowledge stays at the IP provider place. And then, okay, rep is clear. And
well, you could imagine to transfer the knowledge, but then it's another
story.
Another story.
Cadence, what do you think? But you are special, as you say. Story, the order stays the same. You have to see.
So I guess I can bring the perspective of not only Cadence. I work in the IP industry, in IP companies for 17 years by now. So I worked in small, medium, and big-size companies like Cadence. For small companies, no doubt that the need for a rep, local reps, is crucial for their success. Okay, they cannot have representatives in all territories. For sure not an effective one, and that's the only way to get to so many semiconductor companies using reps in all territories. In the case of Cadence again, it's a different type of animal, mainly because this is an EDA company to start with. So they have all the channels and all the salespeople, and they probably knows all the semiconductor companies in the world already, and have the relationship. And this is how they can also leverage those channels to sell the IP. But I would say even for a company like Cadence that already have the sales force and the channels to all the customers, it's in some cases, they can still use reps, especially in areas that they don't have enough salespeople, or areas or when reps has relationship with companies that Cadence do not work with them directly. I also want to emphasize the difference there is again between complex, simple IPs, what we call off-the-shelf. Basically an IP that can be sold easily with a little support, and complex IPs where need a lot of support. So look. I'll give the two angles to show the two angles. If we have something simple like I2C or a simple controller, then there should be no issues to sell it through reps. If we are talking on DDR controller, that is a very complicated IP, very complicated animal, then it has to be direct because there is tons of support, and it will be very hard to the rep to support those type of IPs. So I'm saying even for a big companies like Cadence or Synopsys, there is some room to use reps, but most of the sales are direct.
You mean also that the support is coming from Cadence? The rep is just here to bring you business, and then the support is brought by Cadence. Integration support and everything goes back to Cadence. Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
So what's the difference for IP distribution?
Well, the question is whether the rep distribution model in EDA really applies in the IP world. My answer is not as well. It's quite different from that from the EDA model. But they still provide a valuable role. But the role is different. The primary role in IP is understanding the territories and cultural differences and language barriers, dealing with those issues as opposed to the technical issues of the product itself. In that kind of role, the management of the rep or distributor becomes increasingly important on the part of the principal or the VAR who was ever giving them a direction. Really quite an added responsibility and role in managing that. In IP, a significant percentage of IP contracts require some modifications, maybe small, maybe large, and customization of the IP. That often leads to more licensing variables. Licensing needs to be more flexible. These aren't things that a rep or distributor can add a lot to. They can be good stenographers maybe to list the questions, but certainly not answer them. A growing number of cases require chip architectural discussions and integration with other functions. When you're dealing with a definition of a need, which is very, very often the case with IP, a customer themselves haven't really decided exactly what they need. It's still in the architectural level, and that's a back and forth kind of discussion. It's a what if discussion. What if we did this? What if we did it? Or have you thought of this and have you thought of that? And you're usually dealing at the customer level with somebody that's one of their top and most experienced chip designers. If you're doing the architect, you've been around the block a lot of times. You know what a chip is. You know what the key questions are. There may be things you haven't thought of. And if you can answer those questions and deal on the same level to him, you're going to earn his respect and gain a foothold. It's impossible for a rep or I won't say impossible, it's rare for a rep or distributor. Actually, we have a few that are very close to that, but it's rare. And finally, IP customers require tight coupling with the engineering teams to answer technical questions and expert consulting and quality of first-order effect on their project. When a customer goes outside for IP, the primary reason is so that they don't reinvent the wheel, so they can focus their unique resources on the problem they want to address. But if they're going outside, the people that they're buying from and the product they're getting has got to be of high quality, and the support has got to be fast. It's got to be almost as if they were a part of their native engineering team. Again, reps and distributors can't add a lot in that dialogue because the questions have to turn around quickly, and usually those questions have to be tightly documented in email form and a response given certainly within 24 hours or shorter. So the bottom line is big companies like Cadence, for example, go direct, get around these complex problems above. Small engineering-oriented companies need help. VARs can add value by sorting some of these out and managing these difficulties.
Okay, so we begin to see where we want coming. Is VAR the solution? So it's exactly what you say. These people, it's a lot of requirement around the IP, so the little ones are too small. The rep cannot do the job, and there are some intermediate solutions that we'll discuss in a second. So Chipstart, what do you think?
Well, a lot of the same comments that Hal had brought out, that in reality both Distribution, in my definition of distribution, is more on the component side, because I've been with larger IP companies who had management that thought that, well, we could sell IP just like we could sell components, memory chips, and what have you. And that doesn't work. You just don't pull a data sheet off of a portal and say, okay, this is exactly what I want, and I'm going to go and license that. It doesn't work that way. It's a lot more complicated of a sale, as Hal brought out. So you need a technical interface. You need to have some intelligence there in the front end of the sales cycle. On top of that, how our evaluation cycle is managed. As was brought out, the architectural, the specification review, all those different things up front. You need some intelligence to help interface that to engineering, to help qualify exactly what that customer is looking for. The rep, on the other hand, well, I put about 60% of all IP today is sold through reps. Outside of North America, this is kind of the traditional model of doing business, mainly because language-driven issues promote that. But tier ones, for example, tier one customers, they have their own development teams internally, so they don't go externally all that often. Tier one IP developers like Cadence and Synopsys and ARM, they have their own teams out there selling and promoting. And so just like any other IP company needs to have somebody in the field to sell, to market, to support, to provide applications help, and so on, they need a little bit of help. And so that's what that 60% needs, but a little bit more than just being a lead generator like a typical rep is today.
Okay, Mark, do you want to add something, or we jump over you? Okay. T2M?
I mean, I'd like to add to what the gentlemen around the panel have said. I mean, I've been in engineering for 25-something years. I started off as an engineer. I grew through applications and technical support. I moved into marketing. I moved into sales. I've run global sales and marketing. I've run engineering teams. One of the things that I found when you're running sales and marketing is the reps and the quality of reps. And in my opinion, people around the table here are not reps. Reps tend to have a language and a cultural element that gets you access to the customer, but you have to manage them very hard and very well. They don't have technical knowledge. They really don't have the education behind it. It is very hard to manage. What we around the table bring to the table is a different level of expertise. We understand the technology. One of our managers has held CTO positions in major semiconductor companies. He's designed a lot of the chips. He understands how an IP is integrated. He spent millions of dollars buying IPs. So when you go into a customer and you sit down and you have that interaction with the engineering manager who is buying the IP, and you can present to him and solve his problems because you've been there and done it before, that makes a huge difference. And being able to provide your customer with options and enable him to get to market quicker because you've seen all the problems before, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them, and you know how to navigate around them. This is where the value add comes. It's not just opening the door and taking your client to the customer. It's managing the process, it's assisting the customer in his decision, it's educating the customer, and it's making the sales go. In my slide here, I said that the market was bipolar. I think bifurcated was actually what I meant. But you have the big guys, represented here with Cadence, ARM, etc. And then you've got an awful lot of small guys. A lot of small IP companies, 10, 20, 30 people, very engineering focused. Comment earlier was that is where they came from. They have a lot of engineering, they want to build a technology, and then they want to take it to market. And that is where this panel brings the value, the ability to assist them in taking their technology to market and making a successful business for them.
Okay, so we see the topic of this panel is how to help to survive. I think it's absolutely true. They need help to survive. We accept the big ones. It's out of that panel. They have found the solution. But what to do with the other one? And they need help. We are convinced about that. I think Terminus can only be happy about that statement.
Yeah, I mean, I totally convinced. And one thing I want to tell you, like being representing a small company, it's very, very important for us to have a proper representation in the market. And I know like the financial constraints is always there, and a small company cannot afford to have the point sales people across the different part of the geo. But at the same moment of time, not only the sales rep or the channel partners brings the the intelligence back to the the vendors or the partner company. Also, they are the first people who knows like what is happening in that particular market. They are the first person who understands the customer need, and also through their culture, and then the specific geographical the connects they have. It is important, very important to leverage that the experience the sales rep can bring in. But I also convinced with Amir that if you have to promote the very complex IPs through the sales rep, and if the rep is not competent enough, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be wastage for the customer's time. It's going to be wastage for all the efforts the salespeople or the channels is putting, and it's at the end of this thing the small guy, a small IP vendor who wants to promote their IP to that particular customer or that particular territory, it's not going to meet any of the objective. So it's very important to have a proper representation, and it's very important to have a synergy in terms of what they want to sell to the specific geo.
Okay. Yes? Maybe. Sure. But after that, yeah.
Yeah, the various perspectives to this question, maybe one before. The question being, is there space for reps and distributors?
Yes.
I guess ultimately the deal, the IP deal needs to be captured in a license agreement, right? Licensor and licensee. And for a company like ours, ST Microelectronics, but many licensees, there is no way that you can have such a license agreement in place between us and a distributor, for instance.
Yes,
okay. So ultimately, there needs to be a direct relationship between us and essentially the IP owner.
I would believe so.
Okay, a company that has the resources, etc., to basically technically support, but also maybe the financial resources to, let's say, commit to indemnification obligations, to warrant that the IP has been properly designed, etc., right? So I think that in a nutshell, I see space for the rep, of course, opening the doors and maintaining the relationship, but I see there's zero place for any distributor in this market, to be honest. And we've never used any distributor.
Okay. So you're a big company, of course. First, now I would like to come to the hot topic of this panel. Maybe I would have thought like you in the past. Okay, but there is something which we have to solve. You have small IP provider with a lot of innovation, and you have the market. And of course, rep is somebody who brings opportunity. For the people in their head, the distributor, he gives you two tools, and he sells the two tools with a benefit. Okay. So there was a problem. There must be something between innovation and the client, and I understand that the discussion should be close. But due to the story of the IP provider being small and having to survive, what should be in the middle? So rep is not enough, it's useful. Distributor in a classical sense, certainly not. I take two products, I sell them. But in the IP business, I had to think about also, and DNR has to think about, is there possible to have an intermediate layer where a company which has skill, of course, decide to represent several IP providers. Even DNR was surprised and said, what are these people, what IP are they speaking about? So does this market usually need an intermediate layer for some of the IP provider between the provider and the end market? What are the conditions? You say, I don't want somebody in the middle, he will not know what to do, he's not good enough. So when we say in this area value-added reseller, it's serious. He has to know the product, he has to be a designer, I think he has to be an integrator. So on this market, some of the company have taken this mission. And I can say, okay, CAS, which is here, they were IP provider before DNR was born, but they understood the issue and they represent several IP providers. Does this business especially need a special way to distribute a product by having an intermediate layer, and what should be the quality of the integrator? So I think many people here, they are reseller, but they are added values reseller, they are design house at the same time, and they are integrator at the same time. So it's not like a chip vendor which sells chips. They should be a very high-level design companies, which has a big power for support and a big power to understand the IP. So it is possible, and it exists today. So this is the hot question. And of course, some of these people wanted to say at the first question, I am an added value reseller, I am an integrator, I understand the business. Now we have understood maybe why we need them, and should the DNR be in a position to defend this scenario, to promote it, to show it on the web, and in fact working for the survival of the small ones. It's our business to see these people surviving, giving out good IPs and having customer and giving support. So the question is really now about the added value reseller in the IP business. What is this intermediate level, which under his umbrella, they have 1, 2, 3, 4 IP provider. So now probably it's a more typical question. You are not obliged to answer all questions. So Barco, Silex, what do you think?
Yeah, so Barco Silex, we sell IPs, but we are also IP integrator.
Also IP consumer.
IP consumer, yes. So we just look at the issue, looking at what would I use a VAR as an IP provider or as an IP integrator, an IP consumer. So basically, as an IP provider, is of course unable to address new market as a rep or distributor, but also to address new type of customers, people who are willing to design more subsystem or things like that. One added value, but for us this one is not completely clear, is that the VAR handle the legal aspects, the legal contract. So this raises a lot of questions because, what about liability? What about rules, exportation rules? Like for cryptography, you have EU exportation rules and all those kind of legal aspects. So it's this. If this is handled by the VAR, it's definitely very useful for the IP provider. Also, all the technical support. If this is handled by the VAR, again, that's an added value for the IP provider. But well, of course, the VAR must learn and knows how the IP is built, what is in, what if they have to do it small updated because the customer wants it, or whatever kind of technical aspect.
You should not graduate from a business school, but should be a design engineer overall.
Yes, well, the thing is that the VAR must have technical competences on all kind of IP they have. Well, but then it turns out to be useful for the IP provider if you go this way. And of course, for a company who does no design services capability, that's also again a positive aspect. That's the VAR can do all kind of things around. As an IP user, the main advantage is that there is just one single contract. You don't have to deal with several providers and having a lot of discussion, commercial, legal, and so on. So that's the main advantages that we see as an IP user. It can also provide services around building a subsystem with a bundle of IP. We can, as an IP user, you can ask that to a VAR. But maybe a question, because we have been using IPs and we have good and bad experience, and one of what's generated really the bad experience is especially the support. So as an IP user, we could be a concern of will the technical support will be sufficient, and because being in contact with the IP provider, then you're sure that you have the technical people directly in contact. So this could be a concern as an IP user, whether the technical knowledge will be okay.
So overall, you are very positive of an intermediate layer as long as you are sure of the technical support. If you are sure, you have to be sure that this intermediate level have really the skill to answer.
Yes.
Otherwise, it has to go back to you anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we see. Cadence, I don't know if you have the right to answer. You are not a VAR, and you will not be a VAR. And you are
so the way I approach this question is really to try and list what services I think VAR can provide, to its customer. So I believe the first two is, in general, providing a consulting on the IP selection, and in some cases, really doing the full due diligence on the IP quality and the performance, help the customers to select the right IP for their needs. I think these ones are very important. At the end of the day, it's all about trust. Okay, the vendor the IP customer that use the VAR, they need to trust their capability to make the right selection for them. And usually this trust is built over years of an experience and, and using them again and again, and by them bringing them the right IPs. Other services that VAR can do is support the customer during the integration process, active technical support. Next step is to provide the full integration services, including the verification and the software. If you're talking on a bigger organization, then VAR can also do some hardening efforts for the customer, and even porting in some cases, but mainly hardening of the design to the specific needs of the IP customer, and eventually support during lab testing and silicon bring up and compliance test. So there is a long list of type of services that VAR can contribute to their customers.
But I have one remark. You said IP selection. You should not forget that the VAR is a sales guy. So to consult and say, oh, I don't represent this guy because at the other shop you have a better one. So not sure a VAR can do the selection because he would want to sell his product. But maybe this was a general view of the layer of services that Cadence gives.
True.
It's just the first point, okay?
Yeah, I'm talking also, within from the same vendor when they have a list of IPs, to help them to define the right need, the one that can be configurable, and help the customers for their specific needs.
Within the portfolio, there are
within the portfolio of the customer.
Of course. Cass, now you can tell all the benefit of the VAR you want to see in the beginning. It's very important.
Yeah, okay. This is a good question. One of the reasons up front on the first slide that I took a little bit of time to try to provide my own definition of a VAR is I tried to put myself in the position of each of the other panelists here. And my pretty strong feeling and guess is if you took each one of us independently for this panel and said, what's your definition of a VAR? You'd come up with probably seven, maybe more definitions of what a VAR really was. The point is, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that definition is more tailored toward their world. Some people provide maybe excellent sales and business expertise to assist customers. Others may provide deep technical knowledge of mixed signal designs or hardened IP. Other people may be very good in digital but don't know how to spell analog. So there's a whole world of definitions of what a VAR could be. But using the one that I offered before, and I'm not going to go through them again, the benefits, I think, mainly reside in the area of economies of scale. There's many small IP providers or developers, they're budget limited. They really can't afford the marketing and legal experts to support their products, the sales and AE staff to sell and support in the many geographical regions, the frequent travel that's required for face-to-face meetings with those key architectural kind of discussions are costly, and they may not be able to afford that. Management of the reps and distributors, most of them are technical people, they're damn good engineers. They've never managed a rep or a VAR before, and they assume going in, well, I give it to the rest of to a rep or a VAR, and you know they're going to sell it for me. Not so fast. As I tried to point before, you've got to manage the reps and the VARs. And the development of complementary products. As you start to sell a product, you realize where there's some holes and where there's some neat customer needs, and if you're able to develop those bridges or those interfaces or those things that really solve the customer's problem at a higher level through a group solution, that's something that VAR is capable of doing, and that's a benefit. So it's a broader range of products rather than just what they've developed themselves. There's other products that they're able to add to the portfolio, provided they're really knowledgeable in them, by our definition. And a single license that covers all licensed products, no matter the source, and the flexibility to modify those license conditions where necessary, because damn near all cases, the legal staff is saying, well, I can't accept this, but I got to have this, and you know, it's a give and take. And you've got to be able to resolve those quickly and on the spot without going back to the original IP owner, if that happens to be a requirement. And a single point of both pre- and post-sales contact for all functional blocks, I think, is a benefit, certainly, to the customer, and a staff that has the in-depth knowledge of what they're selling and supporting. Those are all things that I think are benefits, once you've got it defined as to what your business really is.
Chipstart?
So, in echoing something that Hal brought out is the fact that everyone's got a different background. So everyone has a different view as to what a VAR or integrator is, but there is some common elements, being an element of engineering expertise, being foremost, being able to have application knowledge, technical competence, being able to do some element of project management between the customer and the vendor, or between vendors. But as we see, the technical, quote-unquote, sale is only half of the transaction. The other half is all the legal and licensing issues, which can almost take as long as the technical evaluation itself. And so there has to be an element of someone who knows that. And a lot of the IP vendors are, let's face it, they're started by engineers and they're run by engineers and don't have any of that licensing experience. And it can be very costly for a startup IP vendor to be able to make a mistake on a legal contract that can end up him losing that IP to the public domain or worse. So that's where the VAR or / integrator comes in. So we've been promoting subsystems as a mantra for 6 years. It's our 6th anniversary on Saturday. And it's back in 1997, me and 2 other co-founders of a company developed the first USB subsystem commercially available on TSMC 0.25. It found its way 22 months later into the hands of Synopsys. And in Synopsys analyst call, they will say that is the most successful IP that's ever been on the planet and is taping out at the rate of 1 per day. So this is a testament to the pedigree of and the background behind some of the people that are starting these VARs and integrators, because they have that level of expertise and understanding of the IP market that can be transferred into the industry and to help all these smaller IP vendors get to market. Back in the 90s, when their EDA vendors were coming out, these EDA vendors had the backing of VCs who then leveraged a lot of those startups into mergers and acquisitions to create companies like Cadence, like Synopsys, and so on. Here in the 2000s, we don't have that luxury of VCs anymore. Those days are gone. So there's no one that's going to take these small IP vendors and create the next cadence of IP. It's got to be done either organically, as Synopsys and Cadence are doing for the most part, or inorganically by means of VARs and integrators. And that's our job, to be able to do that. And so we work with several IP partners to be able to lead the subsystem development. Customers aren't going to take a USB controller and a PHY and to integrate that anymore. Those days are gone as well. They expect and have higher expectations of the IP that they acquire, that it's been proven, that it's been integrated, pre-validated, and has a test bench that comes along with it so that they can pop it in and they can focus on the core aspects of their chip. So we've done that with one IP vendor who only does DDR controllers. We had another IP vendor who had a DDR PHY, but no controllers. So we were able to merge the two products, not the companies, but the products, project managed it, and we've been selling these DDR3 PHYs separately. And we then took that model and created something called an SoC subsystem manager. It's also IP that's been developed by third parties, but we created a joint venture. And this product is owned by us, licensed by us, and we take ownership of the licensing of the products that we integrate and manage the elements of liabilities, indemnification, and all the other aspects that go along with it that were raised by ST. So this is our view of VARs.
In fact, you've become a subsystem and project manager. You are really the business angels of the smaller people. Okay, so T2M.
Right, so I echo Hal's comment earlier. We all look at this with a different perspective, and our perspective as we deal with extremely complex RF devices, digital baseband software to create devices for the Internet of Things, etc. I echo ST's comment over here. The customer wants to talk to the IP supplier because it's a very complex device. They want to understand how it was developed, what its silicon proven status is, etc. It is very important that there is that strong relationship between the client and the customer, or the IP developer and the customer who buys the IP. So in our business, that is very important. I'm talking about IP selection earlier from Cadence. We put together a portfolio of devices, of IPs that integrate with each other and can provide a larger subsystem or even complete system to the customer to reduce his time to market and his cost of getting to market. Now, they don't always choose the same system. They may change the processor. They may change the digital baseband that is connected to the RF. But through our experience of licensing these IPs and working with end customers, we have experience with that RF with a different baseband. So we can advise the customer on how that experience went. Okay, we don't end up selling that baseband, but we sell the RF, we make the RF successful, we make the customer successful. And then when we look at the other side of our business, this is all outward facing. This is us looking at the customer, creating business, selling the IPs into the market. There's the other side of it. It is bringing the information of the market back to our principals, telling our principals what the competitive environment is, what the direction is, what are the customers, what do they want in a year's time, what do they want in 2 years' time, formulating their strategy with them, being able to provide the level of insight that they can have the right strategy, that in 2 years' time they have the right products. Creating the ecosystem, creating the strategic partnerships with the other IP vendors so that the whole system can go together and be pre-integrated so that the end customer has a very fast time to market. We can create those strategic partnerships to make those things happen. From our business model, we assist our clients, our principals, with their whole business needs, including we have a banking wing where we actually run M&As for our customers when they get to a certain point, or capital raising money from the industry. We talked about VCs. There's no VC money out there for semiconductor or IP, but the industry, the major tier one semis, etc., are investing, and they want to keep the ecosystem going. We create those partnerships. We can bring capital from those investment wings of the company to our principals to assist them in their growth. So there's many ways of looking at the value proposition that we bring, and each one of us around the table has a different perspective, but I think we all bring a significant amount of value to our underlying customers, our clients, our principals.
So it's late. We may go to the last answer to this question. Terminus is quite long. You have to summarize.
Yeah, I may not read this. Okay, so the way I see, you know, the real value from having a VR as an intermediate layer in the twofold things. One thing is, you know, anyway, where VR can bring a lot of market intelligence back to the principals. That I agree with you. And also, you know, there are certain capabilities or competencies areas are there where all the principal may not be able to meet individually. Okay, and say there are a lot of like post-silicons activity, evaluations plan, and you know how you are taking you know the evaluations to the next level and converging into the design win. So these are the few things are there which VR sees those things you know in a more practical way, and they have a right way to you know take it to the next level. So that is the one way they can you know provide a lot of values back to their principals. And second thing is also whenever it comes to a long-term strategic planning, so along with their strategic partners, they can define a roadmap and also you know work out the whatever the bare required IPs should be there, and how what should be the compatibility plan, what should be the interoperability plan. So those kind of things needs to be looked into it. Otherwise, you know, a lot of chaos will be there, a lot of you know misunderstanding, and people will be just working on the fixing the issues.
Okay, we are quite late, so I would like to add in our view. So we begin with ignoring our story with IP provider, and we promoted them. And I thought that the technical relation was always between the IP provider and the consumer. And progressively we realized that is a survival point for IP providers, and we realize it. So we give more attention to this intermediate layer. And maybe this is one of the solutions that is needed in the IP business. And if this is true, the NR should give very special places to these people, for instance, the web portal. We don't know where to put them because we go directly to the IP. But as it's a survival principle of the IP business, we should contribute to make your system known, to show to the market that there are intermediate structure, and maybe create more ecosystem. The Indians are asking, obviously, to consolidate. We could promote maybe this intermediate structure because there is no choice. At a given point, you have to face the real situation. This IP provider around the world, we need to be assisted exactly for marketing and sales, and also for the consumer. If you go to a client that they can say you have 3 solutions, and if they work together on good ones, we cannot address the last point, how you select. When you decide to cover some IP provider, how do you select them? What if you represent the guy and there is a much better outside, and so on, but we cannot go in all the details. I'm very happy that we addressed this topic, and I think over a year in our web portal, we are planning to make a special pages why it's interesting, and for the consumer it can be interesting. Instead of buying 2 IP, what if I go with these people? Who knows? Maybe there will be more attention given. Maybe you are pioneers and there will be more ecosystem savings like that. We don't know. Today you are a bench. I can count them. So will there be more VAR in the future? I should say VAR. I said IP, added value reseller. It's really specific to the IP business, where the information has to be so close to the provider's intermediate level. It's really project manager ecosystem around the consortium of IP provider. So I can just say that this topic will be developed, emphasized by DNR in the future, and in the next IPSOC conference we will again come back, what is the status. and also have more feedback from the consumer. But I think we are late, and there is also a party there for the dinner. So I think we have to stop. I have been asked to stop. So we thank you very much. I was very interested. I will follow the work of the WARF. Fascinating day.